Well, good afternoon, guys. It is February 11th today, so it's still definitely winter, though it's getting on to late winter. Maybe in some places things are starting to warm up a little bit. Anyways, I'm out here in Skull Valley because I wanted to go check out the salt desert vegetation and see what I could find out here if anything interesting was happening. It seems like for the most part, not much is. I knew this would be a bit of a depauperate environment, but it really is a bit striking here in the wintertime. The only real dominant plant here seems to be this guy, which is, I'm pretty sure, Atriplex canescens. Yeah, it's gotta be Atriplex canescens. I've checked a few of them. I thought it might be Sarcobatus vermiculatus because that's what I found mostly the last time I was here. But I found some fruits on some of these guys, and it's definitely gotta be the former here, the Fourwing Saltbush as it's called. They have an unmistakable fruit. It's like this, looks like almost like an elm samara, but like doubled up. So it has like 4 wings. Of course, they aren't really related at all. But, there you go, check this out. Very papery fruit. Probably gotta be wind dispersed. Because not a lot else here is gonna be dispersing your seeds. Well, I do see actually a fair amount of evidence of animal life. A lot of burrows and stuff. Of various sizes, like some that must be from badgers, others that might just be snakes or small rodents and the like. But anyways, I'll see if I can find anything else interesting out here. The only other major sign of vegetation, or really sign of spring I can see here, are all of these guys coming up. But unfortunately, I think this is what's known as Ceratocephala testiculata. It's known as the Bur Buttercup. It is was formerly placed in the genus Ranunculus, and it's of course still in the family Ranunculaceae, but it is an invasive from southeastern Europe and Central Asia. It is very well adapted to these kinds of environments, can handle quite harsh soils. And, ooh, kind of mush it up there, but it is not native. It's an obnoxious invasive. I like the Erodium secretarium, which is just a plant that's so abundant, you don't know what to do with it. It's kind of everywhere. Not exactly super, like, suppressive of other species, but it's just so common. There's kind of like no way it can't be invasive and outcompeting, or just taking up space that other species could use, unfortunately. So anyways, to cover the basics really quickly, the salt desert ecosystem, or salt desert scrub, or salt brush, we call it by several names, is, at least in the western United States, probably one of the harshest sort of plant habitats you can find out here. And by extent, the entire North American continent is one of the harshest places for plants to eke out a living, and by extent, other animals. It's not easy because this area is dominated by these fine clay soils that are quite alkaline and quite saline, that make it really hard for plants to pull water out of them. Water tends to want to stick to these particles, and it's already arid here to begin with, so the plants here have to be really adept at getting water from the soil. So it's only dominated by these rather specialist plants that can grow in rather salty, fine, alkaline soils. Not to mention the clay content is very high here. It feels quite powdery walking down here. Oh look, some shotgun shells. How nice, I should probably clean those up. Noxious. I've seen a few of those out here. But anyways, carrying on. This kind of ecosystem only really exists in areas where there are endorheic basins, which are basically watersheds that don't lead to the ocean. They only drain into basically just inland areas that don't go anywhere, like the Great Salt Lake or the Caspian Sea, to name an international example. Really cool places that are rather interesting, and the endorheic basins cover like about 1/4 of the world's surface, so they're not exactly uncommon, but most people don't live in them, so they do seem like they're a bit exotic. Well, they don't seem exotic to me, but that's really beside the point. Anyways, they only really exist here because elsewhere these kind of accumulations don't happen, because most lakes actually do eventually drain out of a river that leads to the sea, so all the dissolved salts eventually exit the system, but here they just continuously accumulate because water is just going to keep evaporating whenever it flows into here. So even though these areas do sometimes get a fair amount of precipitation to support life, all the salts that get carried down from these mountains, as well as the fine clay particles, are eventually just going to be washed down here and not go anywhere and slowly accumulate over time. Hope I explained that well. I hope the camera wasn't too tilted. But anyways, the result is an area that is not particularly biodiverse. Oh, hey, look, sort of probably a badger burrow. Or maybe a badger. I'm not sure what else could live in these. I've seen a few of these, as I was saying earlier. It's my shoe for comparison. Oh, might be a small badger, but I don't know. I'm seeing a lot. Hey, there's another one right over there. Anyways, clearly, despite the fact this place is really can only support rather specialized plant life, at least the animals here can get on and do just fine. In fact, there was quite a lot of mosquitoes the last time I came here in May, so I'm glad I came this time and not seeing any. And it really makes me wonder what they're actually breeding and reproducing in, because I can't possibly see them thriving anywhere else. I mean, thriving in, and I don't know what kind of ponds or puddles they're using to reproduce. I can't imagine it could live in very salty water, but somehow they must be getting by, because they were everywhere there. And yeah, there must be a lot of animals for them to suck the blood off of, because they were huge too. Anyways, let's see what else we can find. Okay, here's a plant I haven't talked about yet. This looks like it's gotta be Atriplex confertifolia, also known as Shadscale, another common plant of these harsh, salty clay soils all throughout the Great Basin in the western United States. It's like the second most common Atriplex species you tend to see out here, and they can be distinguished from Atriplex confertifolia, the Fourwing Saltbush. At least by one of the means you can do it is by its leaves, which tend to be more spade-shaped, less long. Right here. You know, it's starting to make me wonder if these actually are Atriplex canescens, though. This fruit, yeah, that's got to be Atriplex canescens. I was worried it might be greasewood for a second, because apparently Atriplex canescens can also be semi-evergreen, just like Atriplex confertifolia apparently is. We're getting onto this more open area. And we might see some different things. I want to see some Allenrolfea occidentalis. That might be an opportunity for me to make a different video, hopefully. Looking rather grim out here. This place must be too harsh even for the regular saltbush plants to thrive. At least that's what I'm going to presume. I'll be getting to more playa habitat, which I'd like to also make a video about, if briefly. I'm glad it's not been raining too much out here, because it might be really miserable if it was. Also, there's some evidence of fresh cows too. That's clearly kind of new. Alright, I'll let you guys know if I find anything else interesting. Really not seeing a whole lot else I can talk about here, aside from this can of bush, which is, I mean, just absolutely typical of the we might find out here. Found a few other bottles which I can't take back, and a can of bush. I'm gonna go recycle this. But I'm gonna go head up to the car and then try and find a different patch of saltbush out here to explore. Well, that's a good site. That's gotta be some Opuntia polyacantha type thing. It's a whole complex of species, so this might have been split off into something else, but if you call it Opuntia polyacantha or Opuntia arenacea, I don't think anyone would fault you. Especially without flowers, it'd be hard to tell exactly what it is, but yeah, a little bit of cacti. I was not expecting that. Another one right there. Alright, I'm going to move on again. Well, I'm somewhere else now, a little down the road. The Atriplex canescens is a lot taller here. But otherwise, I'm not seeing a whole lot of different things. There's some what looks like might be incipient cheatgrass as well. Okay, that's not good at all. Here, let me get a better view of it. All that red grass down there. Awful stuff. So, not too pleased about the state of this place. And I was hoping I could see some more plants, but I think that might be out of the question. Well, that's a really tall one over there. I was really hoping to see some greasewood. And there might be some around here. Just can't remember how far I drove down to actually find it in the first place. Looks a bit better now, doesn't it? Hmm. Greasewood tends to have succulent leaves, but it's a much more deciduous plant than the Atriplex canescens is, and that's the classic Atriplex canescens fruit, so I look very so. I'm not sure we're going to see any today, but I'm going to head out there. I actually got a flat tire now, but whatever, I can wait a second, I guess. I came all the way out here. That's probably not a good idea, but you know, I don't really have anything else to do, and I can really get sorted tomorrow. I'm about to drive back on a freeway on that, so that's on a donut. That's not really fun to think about, but oh well. And look here, I think got another terrible invasive. This is Halogeton glomeratus. I just call it Halogeton normally. It's an invasive plant, again, from Central Asia. It likes these kinds of habitats, these harsh, dry, salty environments where not much else can grow. And apparently these are toxic to cattle. So I guess the ranchers just like this one too, so we can find some common ground there. But I don't think there's actually that many toxic members of Allenrolfea typically. There's a few cows around here too, if I haven't said that already. But you know, I'm not bothering me, I'm not bothering them. Anyways, I'm just going to carry on. Well, I'm happy to see this classic plant here. This has got to be Gutierrezia sarothrae, also known as Broom Snakeweed. Of course, it's a pretty hardy plant, so it shouldn't be too surprising to see it out here, but I didn't realize it could handle the salt brush kind of stuff out here. I'm trying to be a little careful as I move around here because there's definitely some crypto that's looking kind of nice here. So despite all the ATVing and off-roading crap that happens here, there's a fair amount of this crypto I'm seeing, and it can take quite a while to actually repair itself, so I'm going to try and be nice to it here, but I am glad to see that as well. That's one bright spot about this environment. Oh, another shotgun shell, it seems. Okay, so I was just trying to tap all the dirt out of it before I put it in my pocket. Anyways, I'll carry on now. Getting onto some saltier, wetter areas, I'm starting to see this Allenrolfea occidentalis, member of Amaranthaceae. It looks a lot like a more common Salicornias, except that it has alternate branches, and it's got a few other differences, I'm sure. This one, I think it's a species found in South America, but the only species found in North America is Allenrolfea occidentalis, and again, I christened it as the hardiest, toughest plant in North America. So it's a really cool one, I think. Incredibly salt tolerant, incredibly heat tolerant. Only likes to have a little bit of extra water than the desert usually provides, but it can basically handle what amounts to like ocean level of salinity. Not sure I'm going to see much else to talk about here, so I'm going to maybe give a tentative thanks for watching and see you next time.